Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Healthy Muslim in Ramadan. We've been talking about how much you can learn during the holy month of Ramadan about your body and about its secrets and mysteries, and how with this knowledge you will become a healthier person and indeed a more spiritual person. Today I'd like to talk generally about water. During the fast of Ramadan, you do not have anything in the form of water or food to pass your lips. That you know. So, why do we need water? There is a deep mystery that 85% of the human body is water. As I sit in front of you, I don't look particularly liquid, but within the cellular spaces of the human body, everything is little envelopes of water. Your nervous system, your brain, you think, that can't be water. It is. Within the cells of the brain, within the tubes that convey nerve information, it's all water. I was very interested when I was a child in this image of us being water. And as a Catholic, I was brought up to man being made in the image of God. So I imagine God looking at a river and seeing his own reflection, and his reflection is man. And I may not have been that far from the truth, except that our last creation is actually larger than that, because we know as Muslims, everywhere you look, there is the face of God. But as a human, we are the reflection of Allah. In that reflection is also a mystery, because I look pretty substantial, pretty solid. And yet the cells in my body are constantly being renewed, some faster than others. But at my seriously advanced age, there are very, very few cells left in my body from 70 years ago. They've all been replaced. So I am a reflection in a moving river, constantly, constantly, constantly being renewed. And the river of life that goes through us is water. Water, the deprivation of water, is the quickest way to die. And to fail to have water, there's an argument because it depends on how fit you are and so on, but most people will die within 3 to 12 days. Rescue efforts depend on this knowledge, and however bitter and painful it is for the loved ones of people who are lost either at sea or under buildings or whatever, there is a point at which you have to say no one can have survived without water. The call is quite late because people might be in a sheltered place, might have a little bit, even a few drops of water to drink. That might sustain them enough, even with kidney failure. I mean, kidneys would pack up quite quickly, but they might still be alive. So rescuers tend to go on for at least 2 weeks, even though they have diminishing hopes that they will find somebody alive. But it is extraordinary how the body can cope with that level of deprivation if it wants to live. And we complain about a 12-hour fast. Not very clever, is it? The body is quite capable of coping without the water if it's healthy. So be grateful that you have this capacity and you're able to benefit from it. So where does water exist in the body? Water exists within cells, and within cells it's very important to maintain the functions of those cells. An example of this would be brain cells. You have to have water in the brain cells for healthy functioning. And people who are thirsty, people at the end of a fast, will be aware they're not thinking that clearly. I call it going wuzzy. I put things down, I forget where I put them. Somebody will ring me and I'll write down a number. I have no clue who it was. I've completely forgotten. I'm not functioning cleverly towards the end of a fast. You have to adjust, of course, and write things down, be aware of your limitations, and we'll be discussing that later. But the brain is quite quickly affected by fasting because of its need for water, for hydration within the cells. Of course, without water for longer, you gradually go into a coma. There was a horrible, sadistic game that was played in America during the Prohibition, where they had marathon dancers. And the idea was that desperate people who had no money and wanted to win a prize would dance. There would be music playing and they would dance, one person holding up another, until they dropped. And people would place bets on which one would fail first. And people could dance without sleep, without water, without food, for nearly 2 days. And they would be watched while they did this. There was a film made of it called They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, with Jane Fonda as the star. Anyone who wants to know about the pathology, the difficulties of fasting, should watch that movie because it's very scary. But during the limits given to us of fasting, we will never get into the sort of problems that are seen in that movie. The other place that you have water is outside of the cells in your tissues. Now, people who are prone to swollen ankles, and there are many ladies with metabolisms which lead to this, will know that by the end of a fasting day, they've got very slender ankles, for which they are very grateful, because the water will have been brought in from the tissues to where it is more important, namely in the service of maintaining blood pressure and maintaining water in the cells. So if you like, water outside the cells in the tissues are an important spare tank. So if you sometimes feel annoyed that you have water in your ankles, it can be a benefit for you in Ramadan, because it's a place that you can draw on extra water in a very halal way. The third place that water is essential is within the circulation. Now, water is kept in the circulation in a very, very clever way by circulating proteins, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail in the second half of this program. But you need water in the circulation, because if it leaches out, when you stand up, you will not be able to maintain blood pressure, and you'll feel dizzy and you might faint. And of course, fainting invalidates your fast. The circulation of the blood, which contains the red cells within this matrix of water, is what is essential to the life of man and to the tissues. If your circulation stops for 3 minutes, your brain cells die and not long after, you die. So we have to be very respectful for what is contained within the matrix of the blood vessels. The water in the body is absolutely essential for how you generally feel. The first thing you will notice in terms of the tissues getting dry will of course be thirst. Thirst experienced not necessarily as a desire to drink, but thirst is experienced by a dry mouth. Dryness of the mouth is a necessary component of Ramadan. Very difficult, as I've explained before, for people who have no saliva or very little saliva, and indeed it may be one of the reasons they can't fast. You are allowed to refresh your mouth with a miswak stick, but you're not allowed to drink. If you're one of these people blessed with normal secretions of saliva, thank Allah for it, because you will not suffer as much as some other people from this symptom. So during your fasting, in little ways, you'll be able to thank Allah for the miracle of bits of your body that you didn't understand were so useful before you challenged them. We'll be breaking now. Please come back to understand more about the benefit of water in your body and how you can fast healthily. Welcome back. We were talking about water and how important it is to know what water does in the body in order to be able to intelligently fast during the holy month of Ramadan. I explained that 85% of your body is water, even though you think you look pretty substantial. And the water exists within cells, outside of cells in the tissues, and within the circulation. 3 completely independent compartments. Now, water on its own is a benefit to you, but water is contained in the food you eat. And so, unless you're only drinking water, in which case you have no nutrition, in which case you're going to be in big trouble, you're going to be having water associated with food. The major components of food in terms of water are protein, sugar, and salt. Fat is not bound to water, and for the purposes of our discussion, it doesn't matter. Protein is absolutely necessary for keeping the water within the circulatory system. If you have a condition where protein is low in the blood, within the circulation, the tubes, the fine blood vessels, can't hold on to the water that they need to, and it leaches out of the body into the soft tissues, and if you're standing, it'll be the soft tissues of your legs. So people with malnutrition, for instance kwashiorkor, develop water in the belly and water in their legs because their proteins are so low, because they don't have enough protein in their diet. There are people who have illnesses, liver disease, in which the protein in their body has become low because their liver can't process protein anymore. And those are people who have big bellies and very swollen ankles. And those are people who would not be able to fast for Ramadan. There are people with disorders of the circulation where the pressure, they might have plenty of protein, but the pressure in the circulation, because of a failing heart, the back pressure, also leads to a large belly and swollen ankles. And It looks superficially the same, but the physiology of that situation is very different to the physiology of a person with kidney failure or liver failure who have low protein. In that situation, you can understand then that it is essential in Ramadan, if you want your blood pressure to stay up, that you do not eat a low protein diet. The normal person needs 40 to 60 grams of protein a day. I will be talking in more detail later about what foods contain protein. But if you think that you can live your Ramadan on sweets and glucose, you're going to become very sick, and very quickly you'll feel faint because your body will not be maintaining the water where it needs to be, which is in your circulation, keeping your blood pressure high and keeping all of the tissues properly full of oxygen, which is the purpose of the circulation of the blood. In case you've forgotten, the circulation of the blood was not discovered by William Harvey in the 18th century, which is what all the English say. It was discovered by the Arabs in the 11th century. The next thing that's really important for you, as you well know, any of you out there who have ever fasted, the first thing you want when you break your fast is sugar. Sugar immediately gives life to the brain. I think it takes about 3 minutes, in my estimate, from going from my wuzzy state to, oh, that's better. And it can be done with 3 dates very easily. You do not need ice cream or any other sugary glucose drinks. Now, this is important. Sugar is important, but it is very powerful. And because of the circulation quickly through, it zips through the digestive system. It has absolutely nothing to do with enzymes or anything. It gets straight to where you want it to go. It hits zero in exactly when you want it. You don't need much of it. A very little sugar will do you good. When you have water with sugar, it immediately hydrates the brain. If you have too much sugar, that sugar then can't be quickly metabolized, so it has to be stored. That sugar very quickly gets put by insulin, which is circulating all the time, into the cells. And that stops you, if you suddenly decide to have 2,000 calories of pure sugar, it stops you from being sick. That's what insulin is for. If you take too much sugar when you break your fast, what happens is you become very sleepy. And that's the brain's protection from getting you to eat anymore. Separate from fasting, people sometimes diet. And I've taken a great interest in dieting, nothing to do with fasting. But dieting is important, and it's very hard to get people to live without food or to eat in a different way. And I've explored in research the extreme forms of dieting, getting people to live on 405 calories of core nutrition a day, the rest coming from their fat stores. Great. It's healthy, it's been studied, it's a good way to diet. But I warn people, be very careful, because if you forget that you're dieting and you have a pizza, that will go straight into your system and you'll fall asleep. Now, one of my patients who was dieting worked for the US Navy. I joked with him that he was a CIA spy. Actually, I got rung up by the US Navy Department in great distress because he had forgotten that he was on this extreme diet. He'd had a pizza to celebrate the birthday of a friend, and he had fallen asleep with his face in the plate. And I had to reassure the US Navy that I had not done anything to him which poisoned him. They felt that I was trying to kill him, which I wasn't. And as soon as he woke up, he apologized to everybody. But I tell you this story for a reason. If you break your fast and then you eat a lot of sugary things, you're never going to leg it through Taraweeh prayers. You're going to be fast asleep. And the point of eating when you break your fast is moderation, 3 dates, so that you're still healthily alert for prayer. After prayer, then you can eat some more. We'll be talking about this balance later, but it's really important. Now, the next thing that you'll be eating in your food that is important to the healthy distribution of your water is salt. Without salt, very quickly you will run out of blood pressure. We all know this when we go on Hajj. Everybody brings salt with them. There's plenty of salt in Saudi Arabia. You don't need to bring it with you. But for some reason, English people never think there's salt in Saudi Arabia, and they travel with their salt. You must take salt every day in hot countries. Your sweat contains a lot of salt, and without salt, you'll start feeling very dizzy, because salt keeps water within the circulation as well as protein. Salt and protein together keep your blood pressure going, keep your blood pressure up. Without salt, you're going to be even more thirsty, and you don't want to start the day with not enough salt and then find yourself getting very, very distressed towards the end of the day. The other thing about salt is that it's a mineral, and minerals maintain the health of muscle fibers and strength. Anybody knows this who, like me from time to time, is intemperate with food, and I'm having a lovely dinner and somebody offers me a chocolate pudding. Chocolate is, of course, food for the gods. And I have chocolate pudding and I go to bed and I wake up with cramp. Because if you have sugar and you haven't had enough salt, you will get cramp and you will wake up and you will be in pain. And this is one of the things that intemperate people during Ramadan complain about. So I hope you've understood protein, glucose and salt, and I'll explain to you later exactly when to have what. Assalamu alaikum.